speaking of Cesc Fabregas and Xabi Alonso, see what I did there? Two former great footballers that could replace one another. Um, Great scenes. We're going to go to Matt Ford at the Bayer Arena in a moment here. But before we do so, you and I should talk about a bit about Xabi Alonso's final match and the press conference he gave and his goodbye. He didn't say where he's going, but you have to be living under a rock if you don't know where Xabi Alonso is going next. In fact, I find the theater about it a little bit comical, but I understand that Real Madrid want to give Carlo Ancelotti a proper goodbye before he leaves. But look, he's now leaving. The season before this was, of course, the one of the best Bundesliga season I've seen a football club ever play. Goes through an entire campaign without a defeat. It is phenomenal. They won the German Cup as well against Kaiserslautern. Fell short in the Europa League. The only match that they lost that season is the final against Atalanta, a very good Atalanta side. So fair enough. But Stefan, he's brought a lot to the league. He's brought a new understanding of how the game is going to be played. It looks like Cesc Fabregas is now the favorite, one of the two favorites to take over the job. It's either him or Erik ten Hag, and increasingly sounds like Cesc Fabregas is going to be the man to take over Xabi Alonso's job. Fittingly enough, Fabregas saying goodbye to Como the same day that Alonso said goodbye to Leverkusen. So make of that whatever you want. But it's changed a little bit how Bundesliga clubs with ambition are looking at head coaches and the way they want to play football. And he's led that a little bit in a similar way than maybe the Ralf Rangnick revolution has changed German football in the early 2000s. Alonso pretty much kicked something similar off now. Bringing a little bit of a different type of football to the Bundesliga. And I think Bayern Munich wouldn't have made the coaching change the way that they had if Alonso hadn't been so successful the year before. So, he's leaving German football behind, but I think he's also leaving German football in a very different place than what he found it in.
Yeah, he's been incredible at Leverkusen. It's his time there will be kind of bookmarked, obviously, by winning the league title, but he came in and he kind of just completely rewrote German football to his to his demands and his tactics and his team. And as you said, struggling to think of a team outside of Munich that have dominated German football quite like Leverkusen. You have to obviously go back to Jurgen Klopp's Dortmund sides, but even they didn't go unbeaten to the same extent as Leverkusen did. It'll be really interesting to see what happens. I was speaking to someone at Leverkusen on Friday, and I think for them, this kind of 2.5 year spell has been a bit of a roller coaster, just as much as it has been for the rest of German football. I don't think they expected Alonso to be as good as he was. They obviously knew he was a great head coach and they hoped he would do well, but not the theatrics, the kind of the show that ended up kind of becoming the worldwide show that ended up kind of evolving around Leverkusen because Xabi Alonso probably took them quite by surprise. They're certainly not a club that are used to having the world's attention firmly placed on them for so long.
Mm.
And someone told me that it'd be nice to see him move on and do well at Real Madrid. They wish him the very best, but they also say it allows us to get back to business. It allows us to go back to being Bayer Leverkusen. And that might seem silly, and it might seem like they're just kind of giving up on title challenging, but it's far from it. It's worth bearing in mind that Alonso did rejig Leverkusen's transfer policy when he was there. He signed a lot of ready-made players. He signed a lot of kind of older players. He wanted players that are capable of winning league titles with the key experience, and that is crucial. But you have to remember that the foundations of that team were built on a lot of young players that Leverkusen spent a lot of time and effort scouting, developing, and turning into players capable of being good enough to play for Xabi Alonso's team. Of course, you had your Granit Xhakas, you had your Jonas Hoffmans, guys like that, but there was a lot of younger players in and around that team that were also crucial. the most obvious one, of course, being Florian Wirtz. Now, I know he didn't come through Leverkusen's youth academy, but he's a perfect example of their excellent scouting department and their ability to develop young players. That kind of took a back seat with Alonso, obviously, and while it worked in that last season, it kind of fell apart this season. They tried to do the same thing. They tried to sign kind of older, ready-made players, and just about every single one of them has been a disaster. I mean, maybe Alex Garcia, I want to give him the benefit of the doubt, but for the most part, not players that Leverkusen would have typically tried to sign, and not players that they'll probably look to try and sign now that Alonso has moved on. So it'll be interesting to see what they can do there. But I think that's fine, and I think that's important for Leverkusen to go back to doing what they do well. But I think it is really crucial that they bring in a new head coach who can match, or at least try to match, that kind of belief and that demand and those ambitions and those standards that Alonso set at Leverkusen. Because if you look at the head coaches, man, I mean, obviously we've been covering German football together for a while now, and the problem with Leverkusen, in my opinion, has never been that they don't have good enough players. It's always been that their head coaches and they're being kind of up to scratch. They're a little bit like Leipzig in that regard, you know, where it's Gerardo Siona or, you know, all the way going. You can go all the way back to like Robert Schmidt and guys.
Corkwood disrespect is huge.
Well, you know, I think they've just always been a team that are capable of scouting, developing, and building teams that should be in the top three in German football, but they always end up bringing in head coaches who are probably 7th or 8th in the league. You know, if you know what I mean. They never, until Alonso came along, they never had the best head coach in the Bundesliga. That might change. We'll see what happens. Interestingly enough, before we started recording the show, I did ask someone at Leverkusen about the Cesc Fabregas rumours, and they've actually firmly told me that it's just rumours. They said there's nothing to it, it's just rumours. So we'll see what happens. They've pushed back on that. We know that he's heavily linked with a move to Leipzig.
Yeah, so I did speak to someone to Leipzig doing.
All right, well, are you going to tell? Maybe it's Hoffenheim. maybe it's Hoffenheim. We've got this all wrong.
They said
but yeah.
to me that it's going to be hard beating out Leverkusen without Champions League football.
Okay, interesting. Well, someone's obviously kind of playing both sides here, maybe. They might be being coy with you, though. They didn't say they're not interested. They just think...
No, they did not deny interest. They just said
yeah,
it would be
exactly.
hard to beat out Leverkusen without Champions League football, which Leipzig cannot reach anymore, right? But so, you know, the rumors are strong that it could be that Fabregas is in the running for the Leipzig and Leverkusen job. Of course, the other personality that has been heavily discussed with Leverkusen is Erik ten Hag, who's also in the running. The loser gets Leipzig, I would say, at this stage, is what it sounds like.
Yes, it would certainly seem that way. But you know, like your source at Leipzig might be making a very good point actually in that regard, that they'll struggle to really bring in the kind of head coach, the caliber of head coach that they want without Champions League football. They'll struggle to keep the players that they want. We've read all season that guys like Xavi Simons will be probably moving on. Cesc perhaps too, if now that they're not in the Champions League. Not just because of a financial point of view, but because these guys want to be playing Champions League football. So you might start getting a lot of head coaches saying, I would be interested in Leipzig, but maybe next season once you guys have got your house back in order. But equally, you know, Cesc Fabregas is coming from Como. He's done very well there in Italy, but they're not exactly world beaters. And he might look at a club like Leipzig and say, actually, that's a rebuild that I'd be very interested in taking part in. So I wouldn't be surprised if Leipzig were to go for someone like Cesc Fabregas. I would be surprised if he was to go for Leipzig as well. But I'd be interested to see if Leverkusen do go for him. From what I've been told, Ten Hag's probably the more likely one. We actually did a whole bonus show on this a few weeks ago, actually going through the whole shortlist. So if you're interested in that, including Ten Hag, the head coach in France, I've totally forgotten his name now, the Italian head coach, who's been linked
at Ajax, Ravioli. Not Ravioli.
Sorry, of course,
Fabioli,
at Ajax. Apologies.
Fabioli.
Yeah, he was in France
Ravioli
before that. That's
right.
So we went through a whole bunch of guys. So it's definitely worth looking into that if you haven't a chance to listen to it. But yeah, I don't know, man. We'll see. We'll see if right now Leverkusen are telling me they're not interested in Fabregas, and
I don't believe
Leipzig
them.
are telling you that they are interested, but they think Leverkusen might be getting them. So we'll see how that plays out.
I don't
and
believe
Hoffenheim aren't saying a thing. Interesting.
No, Hoffenheim. The Sandro Wagner X factor is, I think, one that we all kind of keeping an eye on. He has agreed terms with a Bundesliga club. So
okay.
Yeah, I don't know. And Hoffenheim have denied it's them. I don't know what to make of it. I've been told by someone they don't think it's Leverkusen, but they weren't 100% sure either. And this is a source that usually doesn't dip into I am not sure. Yeah, I don't know. It's a hard one. The coaching character. I think there's just in other words, there is three very big names out there. I know Sandro Wagner for some might not be the big name, but he is. People think he could be the next Nagelsmann. And I think is considered a big hire because of that association. And I think they all three are going to end up in the Bundesliga. And I guess we'll find out how it's going to work out.
Sorry, I'll let you finish your point.
Go for it.
I was just going to say it's interesting that the rumours linking Sebastian Hoeneß to either club have completely died down.
Well, he signed a new contract, right, before the exit clause.
Yeah, well, yeah, but I mean, contracts are barely worth the weight, the paper they're written on, especially when it comes to head coaches. And Leverkusen have a big bundle of cash thanks to Real Madrid paying out Xabi Alonso's compensation fee, which I think is about 12 or 14 million euros that they've managed to profit off him. So I don't think a compensation fee will be anything. But obviously, Stuttgart and Hoeneß won't be interested in talking about any of that until after the German Cup final. But it'll be interesting to see after that if we start to see these stories come thick and fast, because up until about a month ago, there had been steady and consistent rumours linking Hoeneß to both Leipzig, but probably more importantly to Leverkusen as a replacement to Alonso.
I know for sure that Leipzig preferred Hoeneß over every other candidate. But did
Hoeneß want to go to Leipzig?
Well, they kind of withdrew a little bit when he signed this new deal.
Okay. Yeah, well, it makes sense. Yeah, makes sense.
So, but you're right. I mean, this Stuttgart are not gonna say or do anything about it. And like I've been told by people in Stuttgart that they feel like now that he's signed a new contract, he's going nowhere. So, yeah, I think Hoeneß is waiting for the Bayern job. To be quite honest with you,
waiting to see what happens to Company.
Yeah, but
he might be waiting a while.
He might, yeah, but like whatever, he can hang out in Stuttgart for 3 years and then go.
Well, yeah. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think obviously winning the German Cup with Stuttgart is incredible. This is a discussion for, we've got all summer to talk about this and talk about Stuttgart, but
we can talk about it next week, I'm pretty sure.
Well, exactly. Yeah, do you know what? I'll put a pin in it and we'll talk about that.
Yeah.
I've got thoughts on his future and Stuttgart's future, but I'll save them for next week.